Well, many of you have asked about this one particular free agent in the chat. We've talked about him briefly just by mentioning his name and saying, no, not for us. But today on this episode, as we've gone through so many other free agents, and he is a named free agent that will have some interest out there on the open market, today we will dedicate a conversation to the interest level, the history of Miles Bridges of the Charlotte Hornets. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers podcast alongside Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck. I'm Devon Givens. Brianna's here producing, as always, you in the chat. And the chat is already active because of the discussion and the thumbnail photo that we have of Miles Bridges, again, of the Charlotte Hornets. Many of you, once again, have mentioned his name about the fit, about giving second chances for Miles Bridges out on the open market, especially with your team having a ton of money to go out there and try to find a really good fit. And maybe even in this case with Miles Bridges, possibly getting, when it comes to the basketball situation and the finances, of not having to pay as much as some of the others. So we're going to talk about Miles Bridges. You've asked for it. We discussed it. But before we get into all of that, there's a lot of layers, of course, to the Miles Bridges conversation because of the off-the-court incidents. We'll talk briefly, of course, about the basketball and all that comes with it. But we do want to lay out, just so you know, the background of Miles Bridges. So I'll hand it off to Kyle Neubeck here to start things off with a few notes on Miles Bridges and what also tails with his name.
Yeah, so as Devon alluded to, the whole reason we're discussing Miles Bridges in the first place is not because there's been a strong connection to the Sixers, but just because there's been a demand for it, but also likely going to be available. He's a youngish player. He checks some boxes. If you want to get into, the team building stuff, I don't know that we're going to get into any kind of fit conversations, any of that, because of where we stand on him as a person. So I just want to lay out starting from June 2022 and move forward, and we'll say this is what has happened with Miles Bridges over the last few years. So in June of 2022, he is alleged to have assaulted his partner, Michelle Johnson, in front of their two children. He eventually pled not guilty to 3 charges. One was a felony for injuring a child's parent. There were 2 felony counts of child abuse. The hospital report, so setting aside, what he ended up pleading to for a moment, the hospital report said that Michelle Johnson suffered assault by strangulation, a concussion, a closed fracture of her nasal bone, contusion of her rib, bruising, and a neck muscle strain. That's all in the public record. So after initially pleading not guilty in, I believe it was July, in November 2022, Bridges struck a deal, pled down to no contest on the domestic charge. The other 2 charges related to the children were dismissed. So as a result of that plea deal that he and his lawyer struck, Bridges had to agree to a 3-year probation period, which he is still under, by the way. He was required to complete weekly 52 weeks worth of parenting and domestic violence counseling classes, pay restitution fines and a domestic violence fine, and has to obey the terms of a 10-year protective order. That required him to stay 100 yards away and have no contact with Michelle Johnson, though it's worth noting Bridges and Johnson have maintained shared custody of their children. So as a result of that, Bridges was suspended. I believe the initial term was 30 games.
Yes.
He was essentially credited, air quotes around credited, with 10 games served at I don't remember if it was the end of the previous season or the beginning of that season. Had to serve 20 games and then ended up sitting out the entire next season as he's allegedly going through these counseling courses, seeking therapy, et cetera, et cetera. So Bridges re-signs with the Hornets last summer 2023, 1 year, $7.9 million contract. This is the first time in July of last summer that we hear from Miles Bridges since all this. It's the first time publicly that he's there. So during that presser, Bridges offered the following apology for the incident. Quote, "I want to apologize to everybody for the pain and embarrassment I have caused everyone, especially my family. This year away, I've used to prioritize going to therapy and becoming the best person I can be, someone that my family and everyone here can be proud of. He would go on to say, when he was asked about it directly, I understand that some people don't think I deserve a second chance. That's why I'm trying to use this year to prove to everybody the person that I am. Who is Miles Bridges? It's not what people think he is. And I think for me personally, to start the editorializing, this is the fork in the road moment, right? You very easily could have made a case, and I'm pretty sure we would have at this desk, that after the heinous first incident, it's just not worth bringing that type of person in. But when you look at other people who've been given second chances, certainly you want to be an understanding person on a general level. You could see, set aside the public statement, okay, this guy's been away from a year. I don't know him. We don't know him that well. This is a moment from which either he can gain and improve as a person from it, look inward. We've seen, and we saw with someone like Michael Vick, who committed some heinous crimes, served time for it, lost basically everything he had for it. He came back and not only was a changed person, but became an open advocate for the crimes that he committed, to for them to stop happening, and clearly was a changed person after that. So going back to the timeline here, after Bridges says these things, he says, I'm trying to use this year to prove to everybody the person I am. So 4 months later, October 2023, Miles Bridges is charged with violating his probation and his protection order after an October 6th incident that he had to turn himself into police for. He is alleged to have violated those for throwing pool balls and breaking the windshield of a car that his and Michelle Johnson's children were in. In addition to that, the allegations say that Bridges' girlfriend at the time, another woman who is not Michelle Johnson, was also said to have kicked the car. I believe it was the tires that those children were in. Those counts against Bridges, there were 3 criminal counts, were eventually dropped in February because local prosecutors did not clear him. They said there was a lack of sufficient evidence, and more specifically, they said that Johnson gave conflicting statements to police, saying in her follow-up statements she was eventually unsure how the damages to the car were caused. So it's important to note he was not actually cleared, and we don't actually know the truth of what happened there. But as all this is, everyone knows the spotlight is on him. Miles Bridges knows the spotlight is on him, has already done the first heinous and stupid thing, does this, and is back in the spotlight for this. And all that is to say, I believe in giving people second chances when there is contrition, and there is real contrition. I believe in giving people second chances when they've proven themselves worthy of giving someone a second chance. Like, I think that's the important distinction for me, not just in this instance, but in general, right? It's like, you always want to say, yeah, like people make mistakes. There are errors you make in your life. Mm-hmm. Some of them are financial. Some of them are, hey, maybe I should have taken this job. Maybe what if I did this? Well, our lives are in some ways defined by what ifs. A what if isn't beating the shit out of another person and then just expecting like, oh yeah, I can walk back into a well-paying job in the NBA. There is a difference between he doesn't need to be cast into an island by himself and never see society again, and I wouldn't pay him money to play in the NBA. That's a very important distinction to make. So I'm not personally sitting here trying to stop Miles Bridges from making a living, from living his life, from trying to become a better person. My position, which I think is the position of the other people at this desk with me, is that I don't think he should get to represent the team that is in the city that I come from. And it's basically that simple.
Yeah. You sort of brought up the common pushback is that people say, like, shouldn't you believe in second chances? And look, let's be honest. If in any of our background checks, one of us came back with a no contest plea, and again, a no contest plea, it's not an admission of guilt, but it is saying that you do not oppose the case's facts and you aren't against saying that what transpired constitutes a crime. It is an admission of fact, not of guilt. If any of us pled no contest to a domestic assault charge, do you think we would be sitting here at this desk? I don't think we would be.
No.
People like to say that you should get a second chance, but that doesn't mean that something like that your mistakes aren't going to impact your future employability. The only time that doesn't happen is when you have a powerful person who is one of the 50 to 100 best in the world at what they do and who can make the company money, or in this case, make the team win. We are having this conversation about second chances because he's really good at dribbling a basketball and putting it through the hoop at an acceptable level. This is not saying he should be in jail. His second chance is the fact that he is a free person. And quite frankly, Miles Bridges has made $24 million in the NBA. His ability to earn a living is pretty far down on the list of my concerns. I'm concerned about his 2 kids. I'm concerned about their mother. I'm concerned about, quite frankly, the way that we treat domestic violence in this world. When I was looking into this, I looked at a 2018 study from the World Health Organization. Found that 26% of women aged 15 through 49 in the United States have been physically or sexually assaulted by their partner in the course of their life. That rate is about 20% higher in the United States than it is in other high-income countries. And when I'm talking about this, I'm not just talking about Miles Bridges. I'm not just talking about whether or not he should get a second chance or holding him accountable. I'm also talking about how you can look people in the eye and say, you take domestic assault seriously if you give this guy, let's say, an 8-figure salary per year and make him one of the faces of a franchise. I think that's part of this conversation. I think that has to be part of this conversation. The public nature of his job changes the conversation, and I don't think we can completely ignore that.
Can't be ignored. When you look at this, second chances, of course, are a big part of our society, as both of the guys have already laid out there. In this case, though, as Kyle pointed out, some of the, going back and, showing some remorse with things. And as he said, that one press conference that he did and laying out there, people have not seen the real Miles Bridges. And then you come back and follow something up where you get into another situation, violating your probation. Then you question who is the real Miles Bridges based on what Miles Bridges had to say about himself and who he is and all of that. And sure, okay, if you want to give him a second chance, there are 28 other basketball teams in the National Basketball Association that can go out there and do it. Charlotte, maybe not bring him back. Philadelphia, as we sit here and talk about it today, and at least for us, is not one of them. So the 28 can go out there and do it, and that's fine. And he may go and continue to have a fantastic career and rehab himself in that way and rehab his image and clean up all of that in another city. It's just not here because it is very, very serious as we talk about with everything. It's why he was suspended. It's why he did have to go through all the things that he had to go through, because not only did we think so, they thought so. Now, Charlotte, different case. They went through their whatever security situations and the investigations that they had to all go through. They did their due diligence and decided to bring him back. And that even at that time, that was something that was criticized in the moment of them just welcoming him back in the moment like they did so easily. So with that and looking at some of the comments here and how we knew this would be a touchy subject, but people have brought his name up and he is a free agent. And when it comes to looking at it as a hypothetical situation of the Philadelphia 76ers, maybe even just peeking in on if they want to go out there and explore the idea of Miles Bridges, and all of you in the fan base, of course, of wanting a player to come in. Sometimes players have things that come with them, the baggage that you may not want your basketball team to sign that particular player, hire that particular coach, or that front office executive because of certain reasons. And as Derek said, if we had to go through the same thing, we wouldn't be sitting here. The ALLCITY company and PHLY probably wouldn't have us here sitting at the desk with something like that. So as far as we look at it here, that's just how Kyle feels, how Derek feels, how I feel. And it's a hard no on the Miles Bridges conversation when it comes to all the things that Kyle laid out there as part of that history. And the guy's been in the league for 6 years now, 6 years in. And we're not talking about the basketball piece of the talent level that he has and what he does and the money that he could potentially make. It's about bringing him in when you have that stuff tailing him that is now going to be a part of your conversation where you're going to have to answer these questions. Not only he's going to have to answer, the PR is going to have to prep the other players that have to answer these questions. The coach is savvy enough to do certain things in answering these questions. But if you have other options out there where we've talked about many other players, Paul George, Jimmy Butler, Brandon Ingram, all hypotheticals right now because they're not currently part of the Philadelphia 76ers. But that's one guy that we just scratch off the list at the moment for when it comes to talking about the basketball side.
I have plenty more to say.
It goes to way more than just the basketball. We're only talking about him because he's a basketball player. And guess what? The other stuff is there where it trumps the basketball side of things.
Yeah, and look, so everyone has their lines in the sand, right? So I would say the reason I brought up Michael Vick, when that whole thing happened with the Eagles, I was on the other side of that transparently because of the reasons I laid out. And look, that's not to excuse what he did, right? But again, he was punished. He came back from that and showed you through his actions, not through a PR statement after signing an $8 million contract, through his actions, through the restitution, that he cared about learning from what he did. There are people in the chat saying, this is from years ago that this
2 years ago.
October 2023. That's less than a year ago. He was charged with a violation of probation and his protection order. This is not ancient history. This is not look, we can get, if we really want to get deep into the how probation can be predatory and things like that, we can talk about the Meek Mill situation that happened in this city recently where he was stuck in this probation loop for so long. And that's what Michael Rubin, among others, talked with Meek about, that they started this coalition to get people out of these cyclical, you're just getting thrown back in jail for predatory reasons. And that is a real concern. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a guy who less than a year after he pled no contest, months after he said, I'm sorry, and this next year is about proving to the world, not the Hornets, not Michelle Johnson, the person that he wronged, not to the entire world, who I am as a person. And he didn't make it 6 months without showing you once again that he hadn't learned. And that's if you can boil it down to just decision making. It's bad decision. Forget about being a bad person. It's not someone that you can trust. And that's at the base level of sports, but in any workplace, you need to be able to look people in the eye and say, I will go to bat for that guy. I trust that woman. I trust this person. That person has my priorities in order. We share values. When times get tough, I know I can count on them. When this guy has experienced real human adversity, he has reacted to it like a psychopath. So however you want to apply that to the rest of his life, again, people are talking about, who are you to judge him? I can't put him in jail. I'm not sitting here saying that he should be locked up for life. I'm not trying to excommunicate him from society altogether. That's for other people to decide. This is about, do you endorse him playing and making good money to be on this basketball team? The answer is simple. Hell no. It's not that complicated.
All right. Let's take a quick break. We'll tell you about some of our sponsors here. First up, we want to tell you about Rite Aid, and specifically with a My Pharmacy account. With a My Pharmacy account at Rite Aid, you can refill your prescriptions, schedule a vaccine, get personalized care recommendations, sign up for prescription notifications, and all you need to get started is a prescription at Rite Aid. It would be at riteaid.com/mypharmacy. Stop stressing about your prescriptions. Let Rite Aid refill them automatically. Enroll in automated courtesy refills. It's free, easy, and most prescriptions qualify. You can talk with your Rite Aid pharmacist or sign up through your My Pharmacy account at riteaid.com. Restrictions may apply. And once again, with My Pharmacy, you can manage your prescriptions with the Rite Aid mobile app, transfer or refill your prescriptions, set up medication reminders, enroll in prescription notifications, download from the Apple App Store or Google Play. Transfer your prescriptions to Rite Aid today. Just go to riteaid.com/transfer. Rite Aid, caring pharmacists ready to answer your questions and help you stay healthy. Get your prescriptions along with anything at Rite Aid you may need, including over-the-counter medicines, household products, cosmetics, and more. Just ask your pharmacy team for details. Restrictions apply.
And guys, from the day-to-day annoyances to the big stuff, easy to get worked up like we do on the show. Like when Derek yells at me, or mostly me yelling at Derek, right?
You're just speaking loudly, not yelling.
No, I yell. It's fair to say I yell. There's always a better way. There's a chiller way. You can choose chill by reaching for an ice cold Coors Light. With Coors Light, you know you're getting an ice cold beer when the mountains turn blue on the bottles and cans. So they hit that perfect temperature. You're going to be out in the summer sun. You're going to have some moments where you're like, man, I got a lot to do today. It makes me upset. I'd rather be inside. Enjoying time with my friends, enjoying time with my family. Yeah, when I'm up on my roof, putting sealant on the roof. Not a good feeling when it rains and it ruins the job I did. But I can walk inside knowing that a Coors Light is there after I choose chill and choose mountain cold refreshment, a cold layered, cold filtered, cold packaged beer with a smooth finish. So when you choose to rise above it all, choose chill, choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
All right. There's a super chat that we do have from Shahid checking in on the show today. There are some fans who would sign Pol Pot to get past the Celtics. I'm not one of those fans. No thanks.
Yeah, I'm honestly a little surprised by how many people would be willing to overlook this.
I'm not, because I do understand where Sixers fans are in terms of they're desperate they have wanted more success from this team. They want to move forward by any means necessary. And that in a lot of ways is what sports are about. Like the reason the people will defend someone like how Joel Embiid plays with the foul grifting and all that is you do whatever it takes to win the game. But this is about real life. This is about what someone has done. And frankly, like, look, we've sat here and talked about other people, guys who are off the court as far as we know, good people, upstanding citizens, people like Paul George, Jimmy Butler, LeBron James, Brandon Ingram, guys who, as far as I know, not been in trouble off the floor, carry themselves a certain way. And within those conversations, we have discussions that, whether you realize it or not, are in some ways talking about their character and their mentality. This guy's soft. This guy's tough. This guy's a dog. Okay, so if you want to talk about how those things apply to how a basketball team performs, why is it not relevant that this guy is a fucking knucklehead? Why is it not relevant that he is a complete asshole? Of course it is. That is part of, like, we talk about it with the draft quite often, right? One of the things that is the disconnect between the public and the scouts on the inside, the team front offices, is that the people at the front office and the scout and that type of level, they get to interview these guys. They go up close and personal with friends, family, acquaintances, and even further than that, how do you treat servers, people who, like, you're at a restaurant, how do they tip? How do they get down to such a granular level to get to know these people, because they understand building a successful team, not just in basketball, but in any sport, goes so far beyond this guy shoots X% from three. This guy is this good at the free throw line, this good as a rim runner, all that stuff. It comes down to sacrifice and personalities and the blend of people in the locker room. If that stuff didn't matter, every show we did would be, hey, Paul George takes 8 threes. He made 39% of them. There is no argument for anybody other than him. The show's over in 10 to 15 minutes. You guys know that intangibles matter. Yes. Of course they matter. If they didn't matter, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about a Sixers team that hasn't been able to get into the second round, right? Because the accusation that's levied at Joel Embiid, that's been levied at James Harden throughout his career, is they lack that it factor when it matters, right? That is all part of this spiraling conversation about everything it takes to win. If you think Miles Bridges is going to be a winner, that adding that fucking guy is the missing ingredient and the difference, then we just fundamentally disagree on what it takes to win in a team sport. If he was a fucking golfer or a tennis player, somebody that just like he will win and succeed or lose and fail on his own merits, and you want to support him, you want to get behind him, fine. I just don't see evidence, have not seen evidence up to this point that he is anything other than a guy who cannot be trusted. I wouldn't want him in a locker room.
And sometimes those guys just have that with them throughout their entire careers. There are things upon things upon things. Even when they leave one situation to go to the next, things continue to happen. And you look at so many, when Kyle talks about you're looking at the best possible fit and all this for your basketball, guess what? Josh Harris is also a businessman too. And does he want this? Josh Harris just recently, as the owner of the Washington Commanders, they just let go of their free agent pickup, their place kicker, Brandon McManus. Why? Because when Brandon McManus was last season a part of the Jacksonville Jaguars, he and a teammate were just accused of sexual assault on a team plane with one of the attendants. That's Josh Harris's team. So you look at that, and whatever they did, whatever they figured out, whatever investigation they did behind the scenes, it was an accusation right now, is enough information. And I'm only saying that because of, again, you don't want to have that stuff attached to your organization. So as that happens, and we talk about the basketball side of things, we get on Tobias Harris for making too much money, not enough production on the floor. But when we all say this, we all sit back and say, you know what? It's not personal. The guy's a nice guy. The guy's a nice guy. And you just laid out, I've never heard a bad thing about LeBron James and Jimmy Butler and Paul George and all that. Nice guy, right? But when we're talking about basketball, we're just talking about the basketball stuff. We're not talking about anything else but the basketball. But they do their backgrounds on these players for these very reasons as to why they don't want to get involved and have that a part of their organization. Guys drop in the draft all the time because of why? They do their background, they do their due diligence, and some negative things pop up that they don't want to have as part of their organization going forward. That's why they do the stuff that they do. Now, again, we're just talking about this hypothetically for three guys that are talking about free agents that could be signed by the Philadelphia 76ers, and people have asked about them, but these are just simply the reasons why we say no, and that's a real thing here. And to see some of the comments, you're all entitled to your own opinion on how you want to go about building your basketball team, and the fact that things were thrown out in court. But we saw some pictures of things too. Decide to believe what we want to believe from afar, reading some of the stories and looking at where things are right now as far as the basketball team. They can probably go in a different direction in building out things here in Philadelphia versus going in that direction of that type of player if I was in charge of the Philadelphia 76ers, which I am not. But if I had a voice and I was deciding to go there, I would be like, no, I'm not doing that because of those reasons. I'm just not.
I referenced a World Health Organization report that 26% of women go through domestic violence. They also found that gender inequality and norms on the acceptability of violence against women are a root cause of that violence. And the reason I bring this up, because this to me is so much more than just about Miles Bridges. It's a lot about, normalizing the indefensible. And I just can't get over the fact that if you give this guy a significant investment, you are normalizing his behavior and saying, because he is good enough at what he does, we will look past it. Because what, like Kyle has pointed out, he has not done anything to try to fix, like he's not supported any causes that we know of to help change behavior, to help change societal norms. He has just tried to move on with his life and tried to collect that next paycheck. And I just can't get over the fact that like 40% of women or 40% of NBA fans are women. If you use that 26%, that means there will be 2/3 of them that have some level of trauma inflicted by a domestic partner. How are you going to tell them, yeah, no, we truly care about you. We're worried about your mental health and your well-being. We're just overlooking it because this guy puts a ball in the basket. Like, there's just so much more in this world than just sports and just entertainment. I'm truthfully a little bit flabbergasted that there's so much support for signing him. And look, Daryl puts everything into perspective. It's not like you're saying, if you sign Miles Bridges, we're guaranteed a title. That's not the way the sport works. Daryl will be the first one to tell you that. And quite frankly, even if it was somebody like a top 5 player, I still wouldn't want them on my team. Like I said, to me, this is as much about a civic thing as it is about winning a championship. But let's say right now the Sixers have a 3% chance of winning a title, right? Let's just throw that out as a number. With Paul George, maybe you have a 10%. Well, if you sign Miles Bridges instead of Paul George, what is that? Maybe a 5 or 6% chance? Doesn't even really matter because I don't freaking care. But Daryl Morey is thought of very highly because of his creativity, The ability to see 3 or 5 steps in the future to set himself up for the next domino that might fall. And if we just went through that year that we went through to get 5 first round picks that you can trade max cap space, just to walk away with a guy who is pled no contest to domestic assault, it will be a fucking catastrophe. And look, trying to think of the way to say this. It's just the trauma that Miles Bridges put other people through should not be looked at as should not be looked at as something you can exploit. You just got to try to find a way to do better. I don't know how else to say it.
All right. There are some questions in the chat. I will answer directly, by the way. Jerry asks, why are Charlotte and Detroit ready to give him a huge contract? Maybe because they're fucking loser organizations run by morons. How about that? What are those two organizations doing at all? They just had to fire Troy Weaver in Detroit. We talked about it on this show because he had his head up his ass the entire time he's running that organization. The Charlotte Hornets trade PJ Washington. He immediately becomes a winning player elsewhere. Maybe those teams don't know anything. Maybe they're fucking full of shit.
Also, just because those teams are willing to overlook it doesn't mean that you should. Look, I know the end result, somebody in the NBA is going to sign Miles Bridges. He's going to make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to tell you to really move the needle on domestic violence. Certainly what the Sixers do here will not. What I do know is that you can choose to not be part of the problem. And like I said, enabling something you shouldn't enable, I think is the first step in doing that.
Yep. And we talk about Detroit and Charlotte, you're also laughing. There are many Sixer fans that are laughing, saying, yeah, he's on his way to Detroit. Detroit can have him and pay all that money for comical reasons of not wanting to pay. So, but you're okay with him asking the question of why is Charlotte and Detroit willing to do so? Because Kyle just said it. They're terrible organizations. And look, by the way, Trajan Langdon just took over and they just got rid of Troy Weaver. If Trajan Langdon does that, he's going to have, I don't care where Miles Bridges is from because he is a Michigan guy. He's going to have a lot of explaining to do if he does something like that. And Charlotte probably will as well in bringing him back and why they were willing to give him that kind of money. But, all right, we'll do that. We have plenty to talk about with this whole conversation. But I do want to tell you about TrueMark Financial. When you join a credit union like TrueMark Financial, you become a part owner, which means profit comes back to you instead of going to the shareholders. Better rates, lower fees, a better return on savings, and more flexible options with all the same digital tools and tech to make our lives easier. So if you're starting to process of how you want to find a home, maybe sometime later in the summer, you want to get ahead of it. Later in the year, sometime early in the fall, into the winter, but you want to position yourself the right way. TrueMark Financial Credit Union is the place for you to go. TrueMark has local roots, headquartered in Fort Washington with 24 branches in the Philly area. They serve our community and our people right here at home. I was talking to the guys here about a cookout that I was going to over one of my friends this weekend. Drove up in the area. Of course, I always talk about it, the Upper Darby branch that's right there, right off of State Road in Upper Darby. So becoming a member of a credit union has so many benefits over being a customer at a bank. It's a total no-brainer. Head over to TrueMark.com/PHLY to learn more or to find a branch near you. That's TrueMark.com/PHLY. And that's federally insured by the NCUA. Also want to tell you about a little bit more when it comes to maybe you're spending your money and you want to do that just for a little fun, having a night out. And one of the greatest places here in the area is Bet Parks Casino. The Femmes of Rock play. Classic rock on violins. Cool act. And they headline at Parks Casino this Friday night. You could be there for that one. Sebastian Bach, we were talking about that yesterday. Sebastian Bach, former lead singer of Skid Row, brings his solo tour to headline on Saturday night at Parks Casino. Tell you about August 23rd. Yes, Southern Rock of the Marshall Tucker Band. And September 7th, talked about not Kyle being able to see Pink Floyd. You can get to see the Australian Pink Floyd on September 7th at Parks Casino. Plus, from the TV show Jersey Shore, the It's Happening podcast, live with Snooki and Joey. They are coming to Parks Casino on June 28th. You can check them out if you were a big fan of the show then. You get to see them live at Parks Casino. Parks Casino is fantastic. The number one casino experience in the state of Pennsylvania. The Art Park Casino, this is how you win. They have it all. It's my casino of choice. I mentioned last summer, went to see Deion Cole at the Parks Casino. The environment was great. Got some food after the show. It was a great place. So if you want to go hang out, do so. When it comes to the money part of it, if you decide you want to place a wager on maybe some MLB games, the NBA Finals upcoming, state-of-the-art sportsbook while you sit there and wait to see if you win on a 150-foot video wall plus the ultra-cool X-Lounge. The dining experience is amazing. Delicious food all around from the Parks Grill Steakhouse. Delicious sushi, hand rolls at Bamboo Noodle House as well. And you can check out New York's best club comedians every other Thursday night and the best cover bands every weekend only at 360 Lounge. Visit parkscasino.com. Parks Casino, this is how you win. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Some more questions being asked in the chat, such as, what did Kobe do to give contrition to his charge? You're asking the wrong person if you think that I was part of, I can't speak for Devon and Derek, that I have been part of lionizing Kobe from his moment in Colorado onward. So I will just leave it at that. This is not a Kobe show. What did Draymond Green do to admit fault? There is a double standard. I have been pretty clear on my thoughts on Draymond Green. Again, a little bit different. Draymond Green being a jackass on the floor and a guy beating the shit out of another human being in front of his children and pleading no contest to a criminal charge.
Can we just not, what about a guy strangling his mother of his child?
This is not like, we don't have to pick and choose what we're mad at, right? Like I have time for a lot of different things. We are capable of multiple conversations at the same time, right? I don't even mean to laugh it off because this is a very serious thing. But just some of these questions are just like, you're not really understanding, or you're choosing not to understand what's being said here. That's the whole thing is just silly.
Yeah, there's plenty of questions in here. But there's the other side too. He's a loser, and I would rather not attach myself to a loser and have him a part of my basketball team. You see that in there a lot. We're talking basketball. I saw that one in there. He's a good basketball player. He's an all-star level basketball player. I don't care what he does off the court. Well, you don't care until it's your basketball team and then something happens, and then he has to miss the rest of the season because of his actions and not being able to be mature enough to handle himself as a professional and not put himself in those situations, the immaturity that's there that allows him to get into that trouble and then miss those games that when you talk about just the basketball, that he's not there to then help your basketball team because of his decision-making off the floor that causes him to miss the basketball game that you're laying out. So, yeah, those 20 points that he could average, yeah, it might work out. It might fit here in Philadelphia. But should he get himself in the situation again, you're always wondering if that's going to happen. Basketball, right? When we talk about here the health issues that some of these other guys have in signing them, it is part of basketball, yes, but it's also health that prevents them from being on the floor. So if some immaturity is preventing them from being on the floor also to help you in a contending situation, you're justifying that? How? How are you justifying that? And what's the other player have to do with anything? Because guess what? Those players didn't play for the Philadelphia 76ers. They did not. They did not. That was the Lakers. That was the Golden State Warriors.
So those are conversations for those people on those teams who run them, who root for them, who cover them. This is about a player many of you have asked about who will inevitably come up again between now and late June, early July until he inevitably signs a deal with someone and the Sixers lock their guys in. We have said in so many words no to him and left it at that. And the conversation and the topic has kept coming up. So this is why we're talking about it today. It's about as simple as that.
Yeah, there are a lot of different opinions on it all. I'm looking at one. Walrus says, love you guys in the show. We appreciate you loving us in the show. But if Miles Bridges shouldn't play basketball again, your anger should be pointed at the judge, jury that determined his punishment.
And look, here's what I would say to that. I don't know the specific minute details. I know the hospital report. I know a bunch of the broader facts, etc. I can't speak to why or why not on why isn't he in jail? Why isn't he this? Because I'm not the judge. I'm not the prosecuting attorney. I'm not the defense attorney. I'm not any of that. It's not my responsibility to say whether or not Miles Bridges should or should not. And I'm laughing because Shahid is asking about if they should sign Thanos to a contract. So apologies for being distracted by that. I just it's not our job it is our job to care, but it is not our job to know definitively, should Miles Bridges be punished for this and how should he be punished? It's our job to talk about the Philadelphia 76ers and all the different possibilities that could come this offseason, that'll happen in the future. That's what we're talking about. It is no more, it is no less. Everything else is for other people to decide. And I'm not even sitting here, I'm casting a little bit of judgment. I'm not judging people in the chat. I said to you earlier, I understand the people who feel desperate. People are attached to this team because, like me, like all of us in this room, grew up in this area. You have an attachment to the Sixers and most likely the other people in the city or other teams in the city, not only because you like basketball, but because they represent a part of your identity, right? Like it says Philadelphia in front of their name everywhere. I own a house in Philadelphia. I have been raised in this area my whole life. In some ways, the Sixers are a reflection of us. They represent the collective us, right? I don't play for the team, but I inhabit the city. My career is attached to them. So what they do is something I will talk about, something we have to address every single day on this show. Every single day when we go on other people's shows, when we're writing articles, when we're interviewing people in the front office, when we're talking to guys in the locker room, we are caught up in this. This is a giant part of our lives. I would like to opt out on this guy and this situation. And I would think that I would afford you the same grace if someone attached to your life and your work was like, no, I don't fuck with that guy for whatever reason it is. It's that simple.
Look, I said this earlier. His second chance is the fact that he is a free citizen to go out there and rebuild his life. It is not a guarantee to get a multi-million-dollar long-term contract for an NBA team. That is a privilege. And it sure as hell isn't a guarantee that I have to be supportive, that I want that guy on my team representing my city and being paid by the organization that we are paid to cover. There is just a complete difference to he has a second chance and I have to support him being a prominent member of the team I am paid to cover. It's a massive, massive difference. It's a massive difference.
Yeah, and Walrus says, appreciate reading, the comments and us explaining our thoughts. None of us are judge and jury. This was handled off court. He is a free man to play basketball. If you don't want him to play basketball, then advocate for a longer sentence. That has nothing to do with us.
That's a straw man.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with us. It's just personal opinion of who you want. Normally, it's just, well, he misses too many games. He shoots too low of a percentage from three-point range. He can't dribble a basketball. He turns the basketball over too much, or he's going to make too much money. But in this case, it's something that you also attach to. If we were just sitting here doing a Miles Bridges conversation of a basketball, we would say, all right, he's 26 years old. He's interesting. 20 points per game. He can do a lot of things. He's athletic.
We would do the whole, he's a buy low candidate and do the whole song and dance.
All of that. But as we do that, we just did that. Kyle just said, buy low candidate. We just did the basketball side of things.
There you go.
Then you say, all right, here's the other part. This stuff off the floor. And that's it. And that's where it is. And we are all going to disagree on some. We're going to agree on others. Just like we had the fun conversations of talking about DeMar DeRozan versus Zach LaVine yesterday, mentioning those two and why or why not. Those are basketball discussions that we had. And again, just simply basketball things that we didn't like about both, why they will not fit. The other part of why Miles Bridges may not fit here is because of the off-the-court stuff that took place in Charlotte that now waves that red flag of take him off the board for us when it comes to the 76ers and their offseason of putting a roster together. So there's that. I mean, we knew this was going to be a big topic of discussion and contentious, as Kyle says, and that it was. Doesn't mean we can't all talk about whatever player or situation we might discuss tomorrow on Wednesday's show. and have some discussion there of why they should or shouldn't and how much it's going to take to get this player in terms of salary on the free agent market or via trade. But in this sense here with this particular player, this guy, there are 28 other teams that can go out and explore the market for Miles Bridges and decide if they want to bring him in or not. He will visit South Philadelphia as a player from that team. And, hey, we'll talk about, hey, you know what? He crushed the Sixers. He had 27. That's okay. Didn't miss it in a Philadelphia 76ers uniform. That's all right.
He'd have to score. He'd have to surpass Wilt Chamberlain's single game record for me to even care an iota about what he did for his whatever team he plays for or against the Sixers for that matter. The whole conversation is just so ridiculous, right? And I think to try to apply it to the basketball side of things, this is not an organization that has proven that they're like, oh, we're going to be the rehabilitation organization. We can put this guy through whatever programs we have and make him a better person and have this positively impact our basketball team, let alone if you just take, and we're not, this whole episode has been about the moral objections, how it reflects on the organization and all that. Even if you get down to the basketball level, again, the character comes into it. This is not a team that has handled adversity well in the most important moments. So then you're inviting more chaos. Again, it comes back to basic decision making. Do you trust someone in the heat of the moment? Clearly, the heat of the moment has a much worse connotation away from the floor in this instance. But when tough times hit, when you need people to come together, to figure things out as a group, to speak as adults, as people who are pushing in the right direction. We talk on this show all the time about why we don't want certain guys, because I'm worried that this guy wants the ball too much. I'm worried about this guy, he's going to come here with expectations that are bigger than they need to be, whatever it might be. Those all come down. That's mentality. That's person. That's personality. That's who you are. That's your makeup as a human being in a lot of ways, as much as it is about skills on the floor. I do not vouch for this guy's makeup. There have been boneheaded things he's done off the floor independent of the domestic violence stuff. He's fucking posting himself drinking lean on Instagram. He is a dumbass. He is not someone that I trust in any way. Zero chance that I would ever endorse him to play for a team that I'm covering, that I cared about, that I'm attached to. If they do it, we will discuss it once again. Hopefully we don't have to. Hopefully this is the last word we have to offer on all
when we
this.
do post-game. We do post-game. We talk about the game. We just get away from all of that because we are pros, and it just goes like that. And as a pro and having morals, as you said, we just decide that, how about you just not do that?
I just want to bring up, Moneymar is in the chat, bringing up all of other people who have committed domestic violence.
Like O'Dougal, who I know you for a fact
100%.
Hated that he was on the Phillies.
The point, he's making a good point, just he doesn't know he's doing it. People have been excusing this stuff for far too long. And look, when Ray Rice is excommunicated from the league, it's not being courageous. It's not making a stand. He was done. What is tough to do is take an easy opportunity. And Miles Bridges, because his value is so low, is an easy opportunity. You could see it playing out in a million different ways. Like, he's cheap to acquire now. Because of that, you have extra cap space to use. Maybe in 2 years, if he stays clean, then his value, people will forget just because time has passed. His value in the trade will be much higher. You can talk yourself into that in a million different ways. And that all may wind up being the case. But like I said earlier, the pain and trauma that Miles Bridges has inflicted upon others is not an opportunity for a GM to exploit. And if you're viewing that as a fan or as a GM, as that being the case, do better. Do better. And that is part of the problem.
Well, that'll pretty much do it for the Miles Bridges conversation overall. Just to throw it out there for people, because we don't know. I mean, I don't know how much interest is actually out there for him. We haven't really heard much in terms of him in general, where we see different rumors out there, not with the Sixers, just talking about around the league. we always see Paul George. We always see Jimmy Butler trading for Brandon Ingram. We don't see much in here about Miles Bridges. So as we talk about it and we sit here looking at and just scoping out the 76ers, we don't see much about any other teams in the NBA right now of even mentioning his name and him being attached to any of these other organizations, of them possibly signing him to any contract. So now we have to wait until June 30th to see what ultimately happens, but haven't seen much, if at all, when it comes to his name, outside of the fact that why would Charlotte and Detroit in the comment sign him to an extent to a deal? Well, I haven't heard much. So,
and that'll be a discussion for other people, hopefully.
And I do just kind of want to be clear on this. We are having this conversation because people in the chat bring it up all the time, because people in the comments bring it up, people on Twitter bring it up. He is a prominent free agent, and the Sixers have a lot of cap space. Yeah. But I do want to be clear, like, if it sounded like we were being critical of the Sixers or Daryl, we're doing it all hypothetically. There's no report out there linking them. We're not linking them. We're not saying that we're hearing anything on background. He's just a prominent free agent that we're discussing, and we're explaining why we're out. So like I said, if it came off as like we were criticizing the Sixers or anything like that, it's all hypothetical. We're just out on him as an option.
Yep. So we'll see what happens with him in the offseason, where he may go. Would he go back home to Detroit? Would he stay in Charlotte, where he's been for his entire 6-year career, or elsewhere? Maybe Philadelphia. Who knows? We will see when things hit in the offseason.
I have one last thing, because his name has come up quite a bit in the chat here. Us saying no to Miles Bridges is not build the all-character team. Build the team out of Tobias Harris's, which is what people... Oh, so you want Tobias Harris back? No. We haven't even mentioned his name today. This is not about anyone.
I would max out Tobias Harris before I would sign Miles Bridges. It was about
the character of Tobias Harris. Yes.
I'm not sitting here advocating for either player. They're two separate... Saying that I don't want Miles Bridges is not saying give Tobias Harris $180 million. It's saying I don't want Miles Bridges. That's as clear. What is the tweet that's like, you can articulate a sentence perfectly and say, I don't like apples. And someone says, oh, so you like oranges. Right, and it's like, they're two different distinct ideas. Of course, you can't rule out options based on, nothing is going to be perfect, but not perfect is, this guy's a little old. This guy's skill set isn't a perfect fit. You might have to give up too many picks for this guy that I'm not comfortable with that trade. It's not, this guy's a reprehensible person who's a complete dumbass who has a history of horrible decision-making. Those are red flags that you say, thank you, but no thank you. Somebody else take the chance. Again, I'm not trying to prevent him from living his life, from doing whatever his future holds. My hope would be, genuinely, wherever he lands, whether that's with an NBA team or he goes elsewhere, he finds himself ostracized at some point, my hope would be that eventually he learns from this, that he does become a better person, that we can see some of that reflection that we saw from somebody like Mike Vick. That's always the hope, right? That people are capable of change, they'll rehabilitate themselves, and they'll come out of things as a better person, someone who's productive and a healthy citizen. It doesn't have to be here, and I don't want it to be here, and neither do these two guys.
All right. Well, that's it. Pretty much wrap this one up. You want to get ready for a roll call?
I don't even know if I want to do a roll call today with somebody. I love y'all, but some of you guys are pushing my... Thank you to Ed Wright, Martian Lynch, Jay Peso, A.A. Ron, Eugene Ross, Murph Man, X-Man, Phil W., X. T. Harris, John Dickerson, K. Quick, Provolone John, Jerry, Phi Chi, my girl Winona, Slade, Randy Rubart, fighting the good fight today, Rich P.
What did Nona say?
K. Quick.
She's boycotting all games.
Jay of the Jungle. And listen, you will get some of those people just like you'll get the people supporting. So Cannoli, Dave, who else we got in here? Cannoli. Justin Cobb, SB Cole.
What up, SB?
Either Bino or Bino 777, I don't know which. Lost Sleep TV, Rupert Pupkin. Shahid, who had a couple of super chats today. Thank you, my friend, for
what up,
popping
Shahid?
In. Did we miss any super chats, by the way, Bree? Or are we all? Yeah. What about signing Thanos? That was Shahid. That unfortunately made me chuckle while I was trying to make a serious point. Money Marr, this guy Devon Givens, whoever he is, Rick Morse, Goya Gaming, Walrus. All right. I think that's enough for today.
MBD was in there too.
The one that I can never read the
Exactly.
letters correctly. Shout out to you,
So there's
my
that.
friend. So anyway, if you have not, we would love to have you when we're back to talk about basketball and people who we like as players.
Or at least people who we don't hate. I'll settle for that.
Yes.
We don't like players.
We like a lot of players.
And we
right?
don't like a lot of players.
That's correct. So subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. Hit the thumbs up button if you'd like us to talk more about players who we do want on the Sixers and we would be interested in covering and who we do trust as decision makers. Thank you also to super producer Bree for being with us here today. We will be back tomorrow at 2:30. We'll see you then.
See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.